Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
Couldn't
didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is author and gym owner Bryan Wetzel. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming
Really
on. Thanks
happy
for
to be
taking
here.
the time. Me too. Me too. Tell us a little bit about what you do. This new book of yours, mainly. I mean, the gym. Tell us about the gym too, but yeah.
The gym is boring in this particular conversation. So I grew up Catholic in a southern town, by the way, which was has I could probably write. I should have written a chapter on that because everyone around me was Southern Baptist, and you would it always cracked me up because in the South, and there's a comedian named Kathleen Madigan, and has this joke that when Southern moms would come up and say, "Are you Christian?" And you would say, "Well, I'm Catholic," and they'd go, "Well, here we're Christian." And I'm like, "Wow, I thought we were on the same team," but apparently they it was different. But yeah, I grew up Catholic, and as a kid, you sort of float through a lot of that stuff, and you don't really get back to thinking about it till you get older. And but I was lucky. I tell a story, and I had a priest who was very young who came to our church when I was probably in middle school. He rode a Harley, had a big leather brim hat, and had the leather jackets, and he was unique in that way. And he taught us that God is all around you, that the closest you can be to God is in nature. And I just don't have to go into a big cathedral to see God or to speak to God. And that was something that I always carried with me. He sadly died when I was probably 24, 25 of cancer. And I was having a tough time in life. I went to the church where he was at, or when I knew he was last preaching or assigned to. And I remember knocking on the door and said I was here to see Father Ken. And the guy pointed towards something. I looked back, and it was a memorial to him with flowers and everything. And that was a sad day. Yeah. Well, I had been working out of town, I'd been traveling at the time. Literally every week of my life was traveling, doing documentaries and working for different organizations, getting video. Sometimes it was just B-roll. B-roll is the footage that goes over, your main footage. If you have somebody talking and you want to cut away to something, I might be sent out to the Grand Canyon or somewhere to get some shots and stuff. And back then it wasn't as easy as just going online and going to paying the price and now downloading the footage.
Yeah.
You had to send somebody out to get it. And so that was my life during that period for probably about 3 or 4 years. So I really hadn't kept track of what was going on with everyone in my hometown. So yeah, that was how I found out. Anyway, the book had really just throughout my travels, I would have run-ins with, and when you get to be in your early 20s, I still believed in God, but it wasn't something that I thought about much, didn't go to church, and didn't really think God had that much interest in me or what I was doing. And I would run into scientists who, a lot of people believe that all scientists don't believe in God, but I would run into scientists who would sit and debate with other scientists about not necessarily Christianity, but that the science itself proves an intelligent designer, and that was a revelation to me. And then I connected with some of them, and then I read some of their books and got to meet others and interview them. And then along the way, there were little things that happened. I tell the story of three miracles, and I don't say that lightly. Like I'm a skeptic by nature. I
Hmm.
would drive my friends crazy, anytime they said something, this happened, and I would, sit and try and pick it apart. Like, well, it
Yeah.
can't be that. It had to be, wait, maybe you're not thinking of something.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't say that lightly. They were, after my mom died in particular, there were two events that really like caused me to sit down where I was standing. Um, that
Hmm.
made me realize that, there's a lot more going on to the world than I think that most people really realize. I don't have the keys to it all. And I will say this about the book. I'm not proselytizing for Christianity. I even tell people in the book,
Hmm.
you decide what you want to be Buddhist, you want to, what I'm trying to present in the book is that there's just more going on to our world and our universe and the spiritual side of things than I think people realize. I also spent a lot of time reading, and then I was doing some interviews with scientists who've been studying near-death experiences. A lot of people might think those are dreams, and the funny thing is that the scientists who started the University of Virginia studies on perceptual studies were all atheists until they began this journey. And a lot of them
Hmm.
have changed their mind. They don't necessarily know what they believe, but they definitely believe, after cataloging more than 1,000 of these, that there's something more going on when we die than just a
Hmm.
dream state.
Interesting. So they don't attribute that to the brain function and just things going on in the brain during that time. They attribute it to
No.
a spiritual outside world somewhere.
Yes.
Hmm.
And
I,
I'll say
I
this:
I agree. Some do,
one of the reasons that they believe
but
that is that you'd have to read through. It's one of the things I tell people about the book. It's not something you can read lightly, because I dig into statistical things, and there's a lot of data
yeah.
from them in it. But
From
one of
those particular
the
scientists, correct? The ones that
oh
believe
yeah.
this certain thing. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, and the
Yes, I'm
book
not a
title.
scientist, so if you see me, if you see stuff in there about statistics on, how a cell is created, trust me, I didn't do
Right.
the
Yeah.
legwork on that. You don't want to see my science acumen.
Yeah.
But
The
when it comes to that, one of the reasons that they did it is that they this was fascinating to me, actually. So when they do MRIs on people who are dreaming, their brain is crazy activated, almost like they're going through the experience of the dream in for real. But it turns out that when people are dying, their brain is less active. So where is this coming from? It's as if it's coming from outside of the brain. And one of the things
Well,
that
there's a
I
certain
actually
point in the
listened.
brain. I think we've figured out where it's coming from. And have you read the papers on the people that believe or have figured out where this is coming from, besides the
Yes,
external part? And how do you
but
decipher between the two? And why are you rejecting the it's
many
not the
of the
outside world part?
scientists from the University of Virginia who have been studying this have said that they've debunked all that. And they didn't debunk it intentionally, but their studies show that one of the fascinating things was that they are beginning to believe that consciousness doesn't reside in the brain. Um,
And where does this
that it
reside?
well, that's an interesting thing. They don't really know. And one of the things that is interesting
Huh.
is that it seems that a lot of people carry things through their DNA, even when a child of yours is born and they have certain characteristics. It's mostly genetic. We know that. But
Your
there are
genes.
certain things like when,
So it's carried in the DNA.
experiences that sort of shape the way your behavior is. Sometimes it seems like it's traveling from parent to parent through lived experiences that is saved somewhere else,
So we
not
we
in the
can't
brain.
find it. So here's my problem. So we can't find it. We don't know what it is. So we're going to insert an extra dimension, a spiritual realm. We have to insert a spiritual realm to make this work. I could
I
insert
think
all
that I
kinds of
see what you're
realms to fit
saying,
there,
but that's
but
that
why are we
that's
picking
not
this
it at
specific
all.
one?
I'll say this. Um, Dr. Grayson, the man who founded that, he tells the story in his book. I would encourage you to read his book after. He grew up with scientists. They were all atheists. His parents were atheists, all of them. But after
Atheists turning
doing the
believers isn't
studies
really
since the
convincing to me.
70s,
It's
well,
not
I get
really,
it. But what
yeah.
I'm trying to give you that his
I don't.
point of reference started where you are. It didn't just, he wasn't Christian and trying to make it fit. That's not where he's coming from. But one of the, he tells the story in the, his first experience out of college. He's working at it. He was a psychologist, and his he was more focused on people who were committing suicide and stuff. So he was assigned to a hospital right out of college. And one of the his first, I think, year, he's in the cafeteria. His pager goes off. This is in the early 70s, and he got up and he spilled. I think it was ketchup or something was on his tie. So he buttoned up his coat and he goes down the hall and they point him to the room. A girl had come in. She had tried to kill herself. So he pokes his head in the room and is looking and checking on her, looking at her chart and whatnot. She's unconscious and she doesn't say anything. So they said she was brought in by the room. Or no, the ambulance was called by the roommate. The roommate is in the waiting room. The waiting room was about, I don't know, 50 yards, 60 yards away, the way he describes it. So he goes down to the waiting room. He talks to the roommate. The roommate tells, I found her on the floor. She's been very distraught lately. She's very depressed. So he leaves and he says, I'll check on her in the morning when he comes back in. When he comes back in the morning, the girl in the room, he walks in and says, I'm Dr. Grace. She says, I know who you are. And he said, well, oh, how do you know? I thought you were unconscious. She says, no, I was in the room while you were talking to I was watching you from above when you were talking to my roommate. And you had ketchup spilled on your tie. And she's able to tell him
Well,
about the
I've heard
entire
lots of these stories.
conversation.
I'm not convinced by them, Brian, because there's all kinds of different explanations we can go through, and we weren't there. We don't know the specific
Okay,
things that were happening during these stories. So I find them very hard to believe.
that's
It's
true.
that extra stuff that's just it's hard to
Hmm.
convince my skeptical brain. But you have a
I get
skeptical
it. But how
brain,
about this?
and
How about this?
mhm.
So explain, you say there's other things that could have happened.
There's a
Explain
million different
that.
other. Like you could have somebody walk in the room while she's under, saying that there's a person in the waiting room with ketchup on their tie. Like all kinds of different things that could have happened. We don't know. We don't know, and we weren't there. We
Mhm.
don't even know how true these stories actually are. Because when we dive down
Well,
to a lot of these stories, a lot of these people are exaggerating. Humans exaggerate stories.
I don't think a doctor in this who doesn't believe, because this didn't trip him to believe
I don't know any of
in the
these people.
spiritual
Again, these are
side of
just stories
things.
to me.
I get it.
Yeah, and so how do we
But
know?
this is
That's
a,
let's just say it happened,
well, how
right?
about this?
Let's
If
say
you
it
say,
happened.
how do we know it's true? We also don't know that it isn't true.
Let's say it happened.
Okay.
Okay, let's say it's a true
Okay.
story. How
All
do we
right.
know it's a spiritual world or any of that other stuff? How do we know it's that as opposed to anything else it could possibly be, including
Well,
aliens? We could go with aliens, and this is all just a simulation. How do we not know
okay.
that?
Well, I don't believe even in a simulation, you'd still have to get to knowing something that you weren't in the room for
Right, the
and
alien could
being
have
able to
implanted
repeat it.
ideas into people's heads. This
All
is
right.
all kinds of different ideas. Why do we have to go to the spirit world? Why do we have to go to that kind of fantasy world as opposed to any other kind of fantasy world?
Well, I'm not going to be able to talk you out of if you're going to go into aliens. I don't believe in aliens. I believe, I
I
could be
understand
convinced
that.
of them.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have friends who are in the Air Force who swear up and down they've seen aliens.
They were
I
ghosts.
and
How do you know
I
they weren't ghosts? I mean, there's all kinds of
I
different
don't. That's
explanations for
true.
things, and we're just pinpointing it. And I think when we make the claim that it is one thing,
Mhm.
we're being dishonest because we don't know for sure that it is that one thing. We're just pretending
Mm,
that we know it, and that's where the
I
faith
disagree
comes
with
in.
that. I disagree
And
with
we're
that. So I'll
using
tell you this: that they have studied and they've
you,
cataloged
right? They know it's the
over a
Christian
thousand.
spirit
No,
world.
no, 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 no. They're not Christians. As a
So
matter of
it's the
fact, that
which
was one
spirit
of
world is
the.
it? Which spirit world are you referring to here? Which one are
I'm
you
talking
referencing?
about. I'm not. This is the thing. You don't have to be Jewish or Christian to single out a specific spiritual
But you
world.
are, though, Brian, and that's why I'm discussing this with you because you have singled out a
Which one am
specific
I?
spirit. You said the Christian spirit world,
Well, I
right?
said that I'm Christian, but that doesn't
Correct.
mean that
So the
I'm
spirit world that you
pushing
believe in is going to be the
Christianity.
Christian spirit world, right?
No. In the book, I literally tell people I don't care. I'm not trying to lean you to Christianity. Like I said,
But I want you to
I
tell me if you
interviewed
believe in
many
it, though. This
people who
is
are Buddhist, who were Islamist. I interviewed people who were all kinds of different things. I've interviewed the head of the
right,
Satanic Church and the founder's daughter.
right.
Um,
But you, Brian, you believe
but
this. This is where I'm getting. You,
I
Brian,
do.
believe that it
Yeah.
is the Christian spirit world, and I want to know how do you know that? How do you get to that? How do you pick this one fantasy world over another fantasy world?
Well, it comes down to all of the things that I've experienced, all the things that I have witnessed. In
Interesting.
this case, there are scientists, and there are several scientists. There are many scientists, actually, very well pedigreed, who have written books that show that science proves that there was an intelligent designer in their view. And they base
Again,
it
how
on
do
the
we get to this, the
sciences.
Christian intelligent designer? This is why we're here. This is why I want to know.
Well,
How do we
I'm
get
not
to the
pushing
Christian intelligent
Christianity on
designer?
your show or in the book. First of all, you have to make the
I don't want you to
before
push
you
it. I
get to
just want you to
before you
help
get
me
to
understand
Christianity,
how it works for
before you get
you.
to Christianity, you have to admit that that the world didn't just pop up, that there is something there.
Great. I'll give you that.
Um,
Again, I will give
okay.
you those things to play with there. I will give you those ideas, those concepts. Great. Let's say they're true. How
Hmm.
again do we get to the Christian spiritual world and the
But I'm
Christian
not pushing
God from there?
Christianity, and I'm not pushing it in the
I don't
book.
think you're pushing it right now, but I want you to
Okay.
tell me what you believe, Brian. And what do you believe as
Well,
far as
I
that?
believe that through what I've read in the Bible, what I've experienced. I believe
What
that
specifically did you experience
much
that showed you this was true?
that Christianity was true.
Exactly. You experienced something that showed you Christianity was true. What was it specific? Give me your best experience that convinced you that Christianity was true.
Well, one of the things that happened to me was I should have died in an automobile wreck when I was in college, and
Hmm.
this is my experience. So this is nobody else's, and there's nobody to witness this except for the people that I ran into. Um,
Whew.
and this is a longer story that would take up most of this because when I tell the story,
Hmm.
I always tell it long because I want to try and cut down on all of the, well, it could have been this, could have been that stuff. But I literally fell asleep at the wheel and I was going off the edge of the bridge and I literally saw Jesus and he said, I got you because I
He got
yelled
you.
out, God save me. I got
Jesus.
you. I felt the impact, but it was not me going off a bridge. I opened my eyes and I had run into the back of a car, and my car was damaged, but their car wasn't. And what makes this car unique is that 9 months earlier, I was driving around smoking pot with a friend of mine. We had been assigned in our photography class to go out and find. We were doing the zone system. I don't know if you know what that is. You remember the
What?
old Ansel Adams pictures that would show up at
Yeah.
the mall and all
Oh
those.
man.
So he
Love Ansel
invented
Adams.
the zone system for getting that beautiful tone.
Hmm.
We had to go find something that we could demonstrate that we could do that. And we were looking for a barn or something that had a bright roof and a red
Hmm.
side. And we drove from Georgia, goofing off basically, I ended up in North Carolina because we're at the tip. So we crossed through South
Did you
Carolina. We
fall
ended
asleep
up
with
in
your
North.
friend in the car?
No, but
No. Okay.
this is 9 months earlier. And
Let's not go back
this
that
is
far. Hold
back
on a second. Hold on.
before
I want to back
this
up
is
a little
back.
bit.
Well, I'm about to tell you who I ran into were the people
Oh,
that we found the barn in North Carolina. I ran into them in Atlanta 9 months
okay.
later.
So I want to ask you a very specific question. It's a little bit different than your story here, though. I'm very
Okay.
curious. Do you think that children are assaulted in God's house?
No. Oh, no, no. Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons I left the Catholic Church is
Why do
because
you
of the
think
way they
God doesn't
handled
show
that.
up for them, but he showed up for you
But
that
this is
one
the thing.
point?
The way this is the thing. When people say, "How does God let bad things happen
No, no, no,
on
no. He showed up
earth?"
for you specifically, Brian, and he let
Yeah.
these other children be assaulted in his house. I'm very curious
Hmm.
why your God would choose to save you from falling off a cliff versus showing
Right.
up for children who are being assaulted in his house.
I don't have an answer for that. But what I will say is
Why
that
is that
you have
convincing to you
to,
then?
if you believe in Buddha, one of the things
Yeah.
that Buddha in Chinese philosophy is that you do have to have good and evil
You
on
don't have
earth
to
in
have that
order
level of
to,
evil. You don't have to have that level of
well,
assault. You don't have to have that in order to have good. I think that's
how about
disgusting.
this?
But
This is what I would
why?
tell you. Hold on a
Okay,
second. I'm
yeah,
going to
go ahead.
answer that question.
Good.
So the as we've seen by the amazing philosopher Bruce Almighty, the film, the people on one of the things that illustrates in that from religion is that people on earth, women, children, have free will.
I don't see that.
If my wife came in and stabbed me in the back right now, it's her free will. God is not going to stop her,
Well, the Bible,
okay,
he
because
does a
she
lot of
has free
stopping and
will.
starting in the Bible. He definitely does not give everybody
Well,
free will. That's definitely
no,
not biblical. There's
no,
not one place
that's
in there.
wrong. I bet you
Show
ever
me
have
the
you read the
verse.
Bible?
I have. I've written a book about it.
Okay,
Show me the verse that
okay.
tells me that tells me we all get free will. Please help me understand that because I've been saying it for
I'm not going
years.
to quote the Bible. I haven't read the
It's not
Bible
in
in
there.
many years,
It's
but
not
it
in there.
does. Okay, regardless, we have men have free will on this planet. It
That's not
is
what your
not
Bible says.
God is not trying to make the earth the perfection. It is your job to get back to his graces to heaven. That is the
Well,
Amish, how they mirrored their society. The reason they kick everyone out at 18 and make them live outside of the community for a year is that you have to find your way back to their community. They mirrored that after Christianity
does
and how it is described in the Bible.
does God change hearts and minds?
I believe he does. Yes. I've
Is that
seen
free
it.
will when he's changing hearts and minds?
Well, he's not forcing their mind to change. What he's
I'm
doing
sorry.
is
That's changing hearts and minds. He's interacting in
demonstrating.
reality. If God wanted to
No,
have free will, he would not interact in reality. But if God
no,
can interact in reality, then he can stop children from being assaulted in his house and he can stop you from flying off the cliff. So, according to your beliefs, God does interact in reality.
no. That is not what I'm saying.
Did God save
Eh,
you?
I believe he did, yeah. And
That's
but
interacting with reality.
the question you're asking is why did he save me, but he doesn't save somebody
No, the
else?
question I'm
And
asking
I
is
don't have
why
the
is that
answer to that.
the question I'm asking is why is that convincing to you that Christianity is true?
I believe in Christianity because that Christianity in my heart is the right way. What there's a lot of that we're not going to solve on this podcast, but Christianity at the time that the Bible, the New Testament was written, was pretty radical. The way the world at the time was a very eye for an eye type of world. It was very brutal.
Not the
It
entire
was
world, but
very
there were some ideas,
progressive.
yes.
Nah, but there wasn't that many. And I'm a very astute student of
Interesting.
history.
So did Jesus come up with
The
the love your
way
neighbor, or was it from before Jesus? Because I'm pretty sure other people had that same idea, and the entire
who
world was not eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth.
who
It came from lots of different ideas. Hold on, let me get my notes here.
but
I love
before
this.
but
This is
before
great. Love your neighbor.
Jesus. Okay.
Hinduism, 3200 BC. Judaism actually came up with it too. The Old Testament, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Right.
Zoroastrianism,
But
600 BC.
Judaism,
All of these things
Judaism is
came
the
before.
father is came well that but
Confucianism,
Judaism is the
Christianity
lineage
took forever.
to Christianity.
Right, but there's other things before that too. You got Zoroastrianism, which says
But
whatever
you're
is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others. So there were other
okay.
ideas, other people out there with the same idea. So we can't just say the whole world is eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. I will give you that some of it is,
Hmm.
or some of it was, but not all
Okay.
of it. These were not unique ideas to Christianity. There were other people with the same ideas. But the problem with I see with the Christianity ideas, I can go with love your neighbor. That's great. I love that. That's
Hmm.
wonderful. But the problem is the God of the Bible says to get your slaves from your neighbors. And God's also going to kill your neighbor because he needs bloodshed for forgiveness. He needs everybody at the end of the world to die. According to the Bible, these are the Bible things. These are
Hmm.
according to the Christian structure here. So do you
Hmm.
follow the Christian structure as far as let's go with the bloodshed for forgiveness, Hebrews 9:22. God refuses to
Well,
forgive without bloodshed.
what I follow is the two commandments that Jesus would ask,
Well,
what are the best commandments? And he said there's only two. Love God with all your heart and mind, and
why?
treat your neighbors, love your neighbor as you would love yourself.
Why is
Those are
God
the only
above the
two
neighbor?
commandments. He said, why? Because he's the creator of the universe. He's the creator of self. He's the
I can't
creator
interact with
of
this being. I can interact with my neighbor, and my neighbor interacts with me in real life, and my actions affect their actions, and their actions affect my actions. But nothing God is doing is affecting me, or is it? Or is God
nothing.
actually interfering in real life here? Is God affecting
Look,
my life in some real,
I think
tangible
that
way?
what I think that God is, he created he created the earth, created
Mhm.
the people, he created all this stuff. Everything is interacting with you, regardless of whether it's, whether you think it's the butterfly effect or whether you think it's him directly putting his finger on the scale and tipping
So,
it towards things.
is God putting his finger on the scale, or is he leaving us alone?
I think that he leaves us alone mostly. I believe that
Mostly.
we are our brother's keeper here, and that the way we handle ourselves is what will be judged on.
So, mostly. So, he does step in and interact and save, correct?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why.
He
If
saved
you're
you.
asking
You
me
do know the
why
answer
I
to
was
that.
the one saved and the kid who was molested wasn't, I don't have answers for that. But what I do know is that one of the things about, like I said, every human being has free will. You choose to do evil, you, you have done evil. You will be judged accordingly when you pass on.
Is
But that doesn't
drowning
stop
kids
you from doing
evil,
the
Brian?
evil. Uh,
Is
is drowning
drowning
kids
kids
evil?
evil? Is
Of
drowning
course it
kids
is.
evil? Is
Mhm.
needing bloodshed for forgiveness evil?
Well, you're talking about
Is
segments
creating a bad guy,
out of the Old Testament where
Hebrews,
there was a lot of that stuff that was translated. Well, look,
why did Jesus die?
one of the things
Why did
about
Jesus have to die,
Christianity,
Brian?
well, Jesus had to die because he became down and became a baby. Then he moved on to be an adult. And it
Right.
was he was living as a human being
Why did he
to
have to die?
show he had to die so that we could save our souls.
So God wouldn't kill us. God needed bloodshed to forgive us so he
No,
wouldn't send us
but
all to
he,
hell,
instead
right?
of it being everyone else's bloodshed, he
Right.
shed his own son's
Exactly. So
life
God
in
needed
order to
bloodshed for
show
forgiveness.
everyone
Brian, that's weird. That's weird. Brian,
the way.
is that a rule that you have in
He's
your
showing everyone the
house?
way. Okay.
Do you show people the way by killing things?
But that's a ridiculous question.
It's a ridiculous thing to do. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. None of us would do that. None of us
Well,
normal, rational beings would do that.
I don't think that when you're talking about a God, you're not talking about a normal, rational being. That's not how
Right.
you would describe it.
I would
You're
not
talking
describe the
about
character from
some,
that book as rational.
look,
Definitely not.
the Bible, the God operates under the laws of physics that he created.
Wait,
Okay. But
what?
outside of that, his only son was sent here in order to do something that human beings can't do, in order to show everybody the way home, essentially.
The way home is bloodshed? Help me
Why
understand.
are
How
you
did
focused
Jesus
on the
show us the
bloodshed
way
of
home?
Jesus? Just because Jesus got beaten doesn't mean that it was about bloodshed.
That's exactly what
That's
it was about. We
this
just talked about
No,
this. Brian, are
it
you listening to
wasn't.
this conversation?
I
We
am
just talked
listening,
about
but
this.
I don't agree with that. It isn't about
Why did
bloodshed.
Jesus die again, Brian? Why did Jesus have to die?
Yeah, but he didn't have to. It isn't about the blood he shed.
Okay, what's it about then?
He died in order to show to essentially he showed everybody how to get to heaven by the way he lived, by the philosophy. That philosophy changes the way the New Old Testament operated. In the New Testament is a completely different way of living.
So
The
when
Old
Jesus
Testament
says to
was
bring a
very,
sword,
very complicated.
when Jesus
What?
says to bring a sword, or when he says you must hate your father and mother to follow me, are all of these things good we should be following?
Jesus says you have to hate your father and mother to
Yes.
follow
Yeah,
him.
it
Where does
sure
it say
does.
that?
Ooh, I love that one. Thank you for that. Uh, type it in here real quick. Hate father. Here we go. So, that specific verse is Luke 14:26. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brother and sister, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. So, do you think that is a good thing to hate one's father and mother to follow Jesus?
I would have to read the rest of that in context, and I have read that in the past. There's more to that
None
follows
of it
before
helps.
that describes.
I
Well, I disagree. And
Parallel passages, Matthew 10:37. Anyone who loves their father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son and daughter more than me is not worthy of me. This verse
well, you're supposed to
clarifies the
love
intent,
God
not
above
hatred,
all.
but ultimate devotion.
No, you're supposed to love God above all else,
That's what ultimate
above
devotion
all
means.
other. So what you're saying is that he is saying that you should not love your mother and father more than you love God.
Why does it say hate then when you talk about Luke 14:26? Why does he specify if anyone comes to me and does not hate their father and mother? Why would he
Like I
say
said,
that?
I will go and read. I will go
Hmm.
back and read that later. But
I
I
appreciate that.
believe
Yeah.
that there's more context to that. I
I'd
believe
love to
there
hear it.
is.
I'd love to hear it. If you find more
I believe
context,
there
let me
is.
know because I don't see the context that helps clarify that. And also
Okay.
the time that Jesus cursed the fig tree because he was hangry. I love that story. It's
Hmm.
one of my favorite stories. So Jesus woke up in the morning, he was hungry. The fig tree he knew was going to be out of season was out of season, and he cursed it. So me again thinking something positive about this character, if this character was going to be a good character and he's all about love and whatever, wouldn't he want to make that tree grow instead of killing it? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. That one doesn't make any sense to me either. Would you make the tree grow?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
could.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But Jesus didn't. He killed it because he was angry. He was hangry. He woke up hungry. And then Jesus and his angel armies are going to throw people into hell. That's Matthew 13, 41 through 42. Again, not a great thing. I don't see the good part in that. He's going to throw me in hell because I don't love his dad or him, or I don't
Hmm.
believe in him or his
But you
dad.
don't believe in it, so you don't have to worry about it.
So I deserve hellfire. It's ridiculous.
Well, this is the thing. One of the things I wrote in my book,
Yes.
The Path to Faith Through Science and Common Sense,
Yes. There's the title I wanted
is
to get to.
that
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
is that um now you took me off my
Sorry,
what
I'm
I
going
was
to
going
say
to
it out
say.
loud. A Path to Faith Through Science and
No,
Common
no,
Sense. That is his book.
what I was about to say um is that one of the things that I write in that book, because I want people to be better people regardless.
Hmm.
Like I love you. I love all people. I don't have a reason to hate everybody. And I think there's too many people who do that. One of the things I
Hmm.
write in that book is that they're based on the Bible, it is not your job here on earth to judge other people.
Oof.
That's God's. That's
That is
it's no, and even Jesus said that in the Sermon on the Mount, that it is not your job to judge. One of the reasons that
Proverbs 31
he
9.
say
Speak up and judge fairly. First
Yeah,
Corinthians two
but it's
fifteen. The
not
spiritual man makes judgments about all things, but he himself is not a subject to any man's judgment. So he can
okay.
judge everybody. This is telling you to judge.
In that context, he is not telling you to put somebody down or to hate them. Number two,
Jesus told you to hate your mother and
the
father.
reason
This is not,
Jesus
no.
saved the prostitute, or no, not the prostitute, the adulterer, and several other people who were considered sinners who were going to be stoned or chastised or uh, arrested. He often said that unless you are God, you should not judge. Or if you are without sin, and by the Bible's version, the only person without sin would be God. So
Well,
he's
I can
not
go to
telling
Matthew
you to
5:32.
judge
It's a little bit
people.
different. It's a little bit different. Yes, it
Okay.
definitely tells you to judge people there. But Matthew 5:32, anyone who divorces his wife except for marital unfaithfulness causes her to become an adulteress. And anyone who marries that divorced woman commits adultery. This is Jesus's words. So he's
Okay.
forgiving one thing over there, but he's telling us to punish people for adultery if they're divorced. When we know the punishment for adultery, Leviticus 20, verse 10, and Deuteronomy 22:22, it's death.
Hmm.
So I see
Well,
different things here. You're telling me he's loving, but
here's
we've got
what I'm
other
going to
things that
tell
are
you.
clearly not very loving and good ideas.
I still believe in the whole of Christianity. If you want to
The whole of
argue
it.
about Bible verses, then you should get Wesley Huff on, who is a Bible scholar or
Why are we
someone.
believing the Bible when we don't even know what's in it?
But no, I've read the Bible twice,
You
but I
believe the
don't,
whole of Christianity. That
all
comes
of
with a
it.
book. That book is
I
part of that.
believe what I believe. So I feel it in my heart, and that
Feel it.
is where it is. So I'm
I don't
not,
know what that
I'm
means.
not going to go through every line of the Bible and defend it.
No, we don't
No,
have to do that. But what do you
no.
mean that you feel it in your heart? What does that mean?
This is the
It's a
thing. I believe in the God who created the universe. I'm the one who chooses to follow Christianity in its context
you follow
that
some
I
of it
see.
from what I
Okay,
see.
then
Yeah.
fine if you want to say
Yeah.
that. Okay, but I could have chosen Hinduism. I could have
Hmm.
chosen Buddhism. Okay, you can choose what you want. What I'm trying to express in this book is that there is more going on in the spiritual side of things than what people realize.
I
And
don't know. I
whether
don't
it's
know.
Christianity or something else,
Yeah. But
it
spirits, I
is.
mean, that's the whole thing. It's a
And I think
spiritual
that if you're
realm.
going to pick apart the near-death
Picking up.
experiences, then you should interview some of the people at University of Virginia, scientists who have cataloged, studied, done MRIs, have done all kinds of tests that are medical
Are they going to tell me it's
on
a
those
spirit world?
things. What?
This this extra world out there when people die. Are they going to tell me it's a spirit world, or are they going to tell me they don't know, but there's something different out there?
Are you talking about the people who are studying near-death experiences?
Yes. Are they going to tell
Well,
me it's a
I
spirit
think
world,
that
or are they going to say it's
no,
just
I think
something
they're going to
else?
I think what they're going to tell you is that they started out to disprove that you were moving on to something else.
That's how
And
science
most of
works.
them,
Absolutely. We try and disprove things and then you end up proving things. Yes, absolutely. So,
okay.
again, how do we know it's a spirit world? Did they test for spirits or spirit world specifically? Or again, are we just adding
Well,
the spirit part to
I
it
don't know that they would
and they
describe it
don't
as
know?
spirits. I'm telling you, it is a spiritual side of the world. What they're saying is that it is, in most of them have come to the conclusion that there's more going on when you die then it's not a dream, that they've proven that it's not a dream because
I
there's all kind. First of all, you're asking me to go through the science in detail for what it
no.
is that they've studied, but they've done chemical tests on the brain,
No,
they've
that's
done
not what I'm asking.
MRIs, they've done all of that stuff. And what they're trying to tell you is that it's not a dream state, it's something else that is going on. You can choose to not believe it. It doesn't matter, but I'm
It's the
telling you
spirit
there's
part I
something
have a
else.
problem with. That's what I have a problem. The spirit world. When we start calling it
Okay,
a
call it
spirit
what you
world,
want.
that's my
Call it
issue.
a spirituality. Call
I
it
don't need that at
another
all. No,
plane of existence.
we can call
Call
it
it what
whatever
you
you want, but
want.
it's
Like
not what
one
it
of the things
is.
about string
Let's call
theory
it I
is that
don't
they
know.
believe that there's 32 to 36 levels of existence in
Oh,
string theory, and maybe that is what it is.
I don't
I
know.
don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't know. Thank you. Yes, the Bryan. I love it. I don't know is my favorite answer. We're going to end it
Oh,
with
well, I'll
that.
never tell people, and I say in the book, I don't know a lot of the answers. What I'm giving you in the book is what when I studied near-death experiences, when I studied, and by the way, that also encompasses some other things when people are dying, that is called awakenings or whatever. Then I study, we go through Einstein, I go through evolution. I give you what the scientists say that I interviewed or studied, and you can make up your own conclusion. And I even say that in the book. This is the stuff I read. This is the references. If you come to your conclusion, this is mine.
Right.
So
So do
I'm
you
not
know it's a
pushing
spirit
you
world?
to. I believe it is. I
So,
believe that
so you know
we
it's a
move on
spiritual world.
spiritually. I believe
So
that your soul passes on to
you
another
know
plane of
that Christianity
existence.
is true,
I believe that Christianity is true, but that's me.
but you know these things.
I know these things.
That's where I wanted to get. Okay. Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate your time. We're going to close
All
it out
right.
here. Plug your stuff. Where can we find you at? And then any last words?
Well, you can find the book, A Path to Faith Through Science and Common Sense, on any of the majors, Amazon, iBooks, whatnot. If you want the hard copy, you can't go through Apple. It would only be in iBook. You can get the ebook, the audiobook on all the others. The audiobook is also on Spotify if you're on, I think if you're the paid version of Spotify. And then I have a website, BryanThomasWetzel.com. That you can get links to everything else through.
Awesome. Thank you so
All
much for your
right.
time today, Bryan. Stay safe
All
out
right.
there. We'll keep in touch.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. That's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find all things BSW related on the show's website at thebiblesayswhat.com. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to thebiblesayswhat.com and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will get you early access to each new episode on Wednesdays instead of Sundays. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly share and review the show? Today's special guest is author, gym owner. And gym owner. There's an and in there.